Hello, viewers. Welcome to Frontline Conversations. This is Vikhar Ahmed here, and today I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. K. Ullas Karanth. Dr. Karanth is a wildlife biologist and one of the world's leading tiger conservation experts. I'm going to be talking to him today on the theme of man animal conflict. And particularly, the news element in this conversation is that over the past month, there have been four attacks by tigers on villages, on villagers, on farmers, on the fringes of the Bandipur National Park, which, as many of you viewers may know, is one of the most well-known uh, tiger reserves in the country. In fact, in 1970, when Project Tiger commenced in India, Bandipur was one of the parks that was recognized then. And since then, the park's extent has grown, its fame has grown, and the conflict that is there between tigers and humans on the fringes of Bandipur and the park that abuts it, the Nagarhole National Park, oh, has been ongoing. There have been few instances. So I want to ask Dr. Karan today why he feels that this happens. Thank you for your time, Dr. Karan. So you're well aware of what's been happening in Bandipur. So attacks have taken place, out of which three farmers have been mauled to death. One farmer has lost his vision after the attack. So why are these attacks taking place?
Why the attacks are taking place is primarily because tiger numbers have increased, tiger population densities have increased, and they are territorial species. And when you compress them, uh, there is more strife inside, there's more pressure for them to move out. And tigers naturally have very high reproductive rates. A female produces 15 cubs in a lifetime in a well protected area. So there is that issue. The second issue is that people, when tigers are in proximity to people, people also don't behave rationally. For example, one of the attacks you mentioned, a mob of people went trying to photograph the tiger. Some people got up onto trees and escaped, and one guy lost his eyes. So people don't behave rationally when tigers are seen in agricultural landscape. The tendency is to mob, form a big crowd, try to attack it, and it always leads to some incident like this. But we have to remember one thing: because tiger is a big cat and a fierce animal, the reaction of the people and the public and the media is also a little bit over the top. For example, in Karnataka or all of India, maybe 50, 100 people may have been getting killed by tigers in all sorts of circumstances. Not all are man eaters, but more than 500 people are killed by elephants. The same week that man was attacked in Bandipur, two people were killed by elephants in Kudremukh. So somehow that doesn't make the news. Karnataka, 50 plus people are killed by elephants, as opposed to a much smaller number by tigers. So it's a it's partly impression, but partly there's a reality of increasing numbers and tigers and people not good combination for coexisting, although the media likes to hype coexistence. These instances are the example to show that coexistence does not work at the scale of individual parks. It works at the scale of a district, the whole state, all country, people and tigers will coexist. But the moment you try to pack them all into the home range of a few females, a little park, conflict is bound to happen. And we have to address that and recognize that and not sing this coexistence story and go on saying it while we are seeing the unfolding conflict.
So let's come back to the point of coexistence later, but this point that you made about the carrying capacity, can we dwell on that for a bit? Because you've researched on this in detail in the past. So, according to the numbers from the National Tiger Conservation Authority, the status of tigers report of 2022. Uh, there were at least 3,161 tigers in India. Of this, the largest chunk, is in Karnataka or Madhya Pradesh. There's always this competition.
Let me stop you there. These numbers are meaningless. A lot of them are very poorly collected. For example, Karnataka has as many
Well,
tigers.
let me tell you. According to this report, there are 435 tigers in Karnataka. Bandipur has 150
No,
tigers.
I know the numbers. What I am saying,
But for the purpose of our viewers, if I could just put out the number and then you can explain to me why you think this is complete, why you disagree with the methodology. So, according to this, there are more than 400 tigers in Karnataka, and the largest chunk are in Bandipur and in Nagarhole. 150 tigers in a little more than 800 square kilometers in Bandipur, and 141 tigers in more than 600 square kilometers in Nagarhole. Now, your contention, you disagree with these numbers. So, but you also say that the carrying capacity of of these two parks has been reached, in a way, has been saturated. So, if you could discuss both these points, why do you disagree with these numbers, and in the and what you still say that the tiger numbers have in a way, the numbers have saturated. So if you can explain that.
I will explain that. First, these official statistics. Let me come to that. You go back to 1972 when Project Tiger began, they said there were 1800 tigers. And using a different methodology, it went on going up. It was 4,500 tigers in 1998. And it was slightly pegged down to 3,600 tigers in 2002. And they do this once in 4 years. But finally, when the whole hoax of these tiger numbers and the Sariska population crashing, a tiger task force was appointed. And they had a good chance to revamp the method, which was a bad method, the per mark census, very easily manipulated and also unscientific. Instead of replacing it with a good method that could help us answer these questions, they used cameras, which I was recommending, but the rest of the analysis and design was bad. So, what they did was from 2002, a number of 3,600, they brought it down to 1,400. This 1,400 was absurdly low, but it was done deliberately to give them more room to go on manipulating numbers and claiming increases. So I do not go by these numbers for one reason. They are very badly collected, very badly analyzed. Number two, these kind of once in 4 year surveys, if you look at their numbers, they come once in 4 years. Why? Tiger is a highly reproductive species which turns over very rapidly. You have to estimate numbers every year, which we have done for 30 years in Nagarhole, using the right methods, and the data will include not just bland numbers being plotted, how the densities are rising, how the densities are coming up, how many proportion of animals are lost each year, how many are being added. That's the kind of science you need to address these kind of questions. So when people start reeling out these numbers, I dismiss them because we know tiger numbers have increased. We do have data on some of these places for 30 years. So do some other parks, but not the government statistics. And we have to make statements based on solid science, which I am making, saying tiger numbers have increased. And I will tell you why. At the we have monitoring in this 30 years of monitoring tigers in Nagarhole and about 20 or so in Bandipur. Tiger numbers.
So can you just tell me these 30 years, which period is this?
Nagarhole is from 1988 to 2018. Bandipur is from about 2010 onwards to 2018. So, so the point is, tiger numbers fluctuate naturally, depending on how many females have bred in the previous year. There is a number of female territories. The numbers breeding each year that are producing cubs varies. So this fluctuation we see varies between 8 tigers per 100 square kilometer to 15 tigers per 100 square kilometer. If you do this measurement once in 4 years, you miss this fluctuation completely. Secondly, the reproduction rates are very high. The key question is why these tiger numbers are saturated. What drives this? Number one was in the initial years, it was the banning on hunting, killing of prey species, killing of tigers, say from 1970 to say up to 2000. That removal of hunting pressures gradually built prey numbers up and the tiger numbers up. There's roughly one tiger requires a prey base of 500 prey animals. What has happened in recent times, particularly in the last 10-15 years, is there is excessive manipulation of the habitat for various reasons, which has increased prey densities way beyond natural levels. When we started measuring prey densities in Nagarhole and Bandipur, Nagarhole particularly, the prey densities of cheetal, which is a common species, was about 30-40 animals per square kilometer. Now it's gone up to 100 in some places. So this kind of artificial manipulation of habitat through misguided ideas of kindness to animals or doing good or so-called scientific management is the fundamental reason why tiger numbers have increased. Once you push the prey base beyond natural levels, the tiger numbers also reach beyond natural levels. There, I would say in these natural moist forests that you see in Bandipur and Nagarhole, there should be about 30, 40, 20 cheetal per square kilometers, not hundreds. Similarly, tiger densities in the range of 5 to 10 or maybe even 12 are reasonable. Now we are finding these densities which are 15, 20. So what happens is they get compressed into smaller territories. That's how the number increases. And the other thing that has changed is with the superabundant prey base, cub survival has increased. Usually a tigress may give birth to 4 or 5 cubs, but most of them don't make it to the first year, and a lot are lost in the second year. Now you are seeing even in places 4 to 5 cubs being raised to full adulthood, and that's when they disperse. So either they evicted the territorial tigers or they're dispersing young, and you are even seeing these breeding animals pushed to the edge of the park. And in recent instances, these are all biological things which can be addressed through scientific management of habitat, and that is not on the card because they refuse to accept good science or even accommodate it. It is all once in 4 years, everybody goes and reels out numbers and then they go back to sleep. The point is you have to manage tiger populations today. The days of just protecting them and raising them is over. We have to manage populations. In some places, we need to still need bring tigers up because I have always argued India can have not 3 or 4,000, we can have 20,000 tigers. But that depends on managing the populations. In some places where they are still low, in many places in eastern India, tigers are virtually zero on the ground. That's where you need attention, investment, and protection to bring them up. In places which are already saturated, which are primarily about 30 or 40 parks in India, we have to manage these populations. First, stop attempts to boost prey numbers and tiger numbers first. Stop these things.
So this you said the forest departments have artificially manipulated
Yes.
the habitat and
Yes.
the landscape. Can you explain how? Is it the digging of water holes? Is it the fire?
I will tell you how. Number one is water. Cheetal and these common prey species are water dependent. If you go and put water holes everywhere, their survival rates increases, their densities increase. Okay, that has the consequences on the predators. Second manipulation has been this jihad on exotics. That's what I call jihad on exotics. Yeah, see, lantana came to this country 200 years ago. Chromolina or Eupatorium, what they call, came about 100 years ago. So these are all have become endemic in some sense, and their aggressive spread was promoted by the logging and forest fires, which are the responsibility of the forest department. Now they have reached a certain stage. Now, there is not much you can do about them except let the forest grow back. It's a slow process. You can see it in places within Nagarhole where, with simple protection, the exotics have slowly moved out and the native vegetation has come back. On the other hand, there are these massive investments in creating grasslands. There are consultants who go and help forest department to create grasslands. These are the kinds of manipulations that are unnecessary, not justified by data, and are, to be honest, for the sake of spending money, they are being done. These drive this density of tigers and prey beyond reasonable levels. The first step is to stop that. They need to bring that down, but there's tremendous resistance to it. I tried. I was on the NTCA. I've been on all the government committees. And other ecologists have also said this. It's not just me. Stop these manipulations, but that's where the money is. That's why the resistance is to listen to people like us or even keep us away, because the consultants for grasslands will arrive there and create grasslands. This is how tigers' habitats are being managed, and unless we face this problem can't be addressed. The second issue is when I said manage tiger populations, that means understand the biology of tigers. A tigress acquires a territory at 3 years of age, and if she has the territory and enough prey, she produces every 3 years, she produces 3 cubs on average. That's one tigress, 1 cub per tigress per year. You are saying there are 3,000 tigers in India, let us say 3 or 4 or whatever. There are 1,000 tigresses in secure habitats. They will be producing 1,000 tigers every year. That's their reproductive rate. So when you have these populations where this kind of reproduction is taking place, you have to and have conflict situations. First, don't manipulate tiger populations and augment them further. The first thing we do when we see a lost cub or a injured tiger, take it to a rescue center. This rescue has become another business. So you are keeping them in captivity for 20 years, 30 years, feeding at enormous cost. Now it started. I hear reports of them being given to private zoos and all. How long are you going to do? Treat our forest like some tiger farms and then harvest and display these tigers or put them in cages. Tigers have to die in nature. Every tiger dies painfully in nature, most tigers. And that's a part of being wildlife. It's not a domestic animal. So, cubs are rescued, dying old animals are rescued. The desperateness to rescue is so much that the cubs are taken away, the mother is still in there looking for them. Stop this rescue business.
So tell me this, Dr. Karan. So every time an unfortunate attack like this takes place,
Yes, I come to the attack later. I am just talking of basic biology. Stop, forget the attack part, I'll come later. Just the number of, if the mother dies, cubs are starving, start feeding it. I've seen this in Ranthambore everywhere. It's not unique to Karnataka. This business of artificially feeding tigers, rescuing them, taking them to hospitals, putting them back, releasing them back, all this has to stop. Tigers have natural mortality rates of 20% per year. That's nature. And that's perfectly fine because their reproduction rates can more than keep up with that. We have to understand these are wild creatures which needs to be in the wild. When you confine them and protect them and interfere in all these manners, then you have to be responsible of taking out the animals when there is a conflict. To me, human life is the most important thing. You can't, every time I've seen these man-eating outbreaks or attack outbreaks, see, and there are two situations it happens. An animal comes out, it's not hunted a human being, it is still afraid of people. Mobs go and get mobbed and the tiger gets injured, people get killed. That's one situation. But that tiger is still terrified of human beings. It is not a man-eater. But then you get these animals which lose that fear of human beings and start systematically killing people. Those animals have to be immediately shot. There is no question of tranquilizing them, catching them, all the circus that goes on. Meanwhile, they kill more people and mobs form. They become uncontrollable.
No, but how do they know that they've captured the right?
No, you will never know. If there is, look, you have these cameras, you are monitoring tigers and all. What I am saying is, here's a population with a natural 20% mortality rate. Even if you kill the wrong tiger, it's not like a human criminal court trial. You have to eliminate the tigers till the man-eater is taken out. The problem is, this can be done in areas like where these conflicts are breaking out on the edges. But if man-eating takes place in the middle of a park, it becomes a much harder problem because that's where they are breeding, that's where the populations are. So overall, we have to manage populations of tigers, and management includes hunting. Definition of conservation is not just preservation. It involves elimination of problem animals, elimination of pest species. It also involves, in some cases like Africa and other places, they are harvesting wild species. With fisheries, we are doing it, although we don't call that. We are harvesting wildlife when you take fish from a stream and eat it. So we have to shed this emotional attachment, excessive emotional attachment, and view this problem as a rational response to population management based on science.
Uh, it's some of these things are in a way would shock many of our viewers. A leading tiger conservation expert is in a way suggesting that we should eliminate the problem tigers, but what? How do we identify the problem tiger? I mean, 4 attacks have taken place. 4 farmers were attacked, right, over the past month. Now there are several tigers and tigresses in that vicinity. So how do we know which is the right tiger?
IUCN Cat Specialist Group came up with this dilemma 25 years ago, and at that time it decided it is not possible to identify the problem tigers. You have to eliminate the tigers till the problem stops. In reality, that's what happens. And this rescuing and delaying all the whole thing with the circuses is not going to change that reality. Problem tigers have to be eliminated. I'm not recommending, like Dr. Madhav Gadgil did recently, that licensed hunting should be reopened in India and forest guards should all be sent out and the villages should be kept in charge of the forest. I don't go to that extreme. I'm being in the middle, being reasonable, opposing animal lovers who sit in safe cities while a tigress in Yavatmal district killed 13 people while her supporters were, opposing that animal being eliminated by filing court cases. This urban welfare mentality does not suit the management of wild populations of animals. You have to accept the fact that problem animals have to be particularly man-eaters because the reaction of the humans, it's because of this today we cannot declare a single protected area in Karnataka. I tried very hard and I was in NTCA to get Kudremukh notified as a uh, Project Tiger area. Both parties in the assembly opposed it. Same thing is happening in MM Hills. Five tigers were poisoned on the edge of MM Hills, tigress with her cubs. The entire legislature and local populations do not want that area brought under Project Tiger because they see as the Project Tiger more money, more habitat manipulations, and they face the consequences. So we need more protected areas. We need more serious protection. But we also need rational population management of each species depending on their population dynamics. This ad hoc arm waving census is not enough. We need more science.
Dr. Karanth, a couple of last final questions. We're coming towards the end of our interview. So you mentioned that there is resistance from the forest department. You've been a pioneering wildlife biologist. You were the first person to come back and study tigers in the manner in which you did. You know Nagarhole, you know Bandipur. You've been going there from the 1960s onwards, and and you were closely involved with taking the census. But over the past few years, you mentioned that there's been resistance to implementing good scientific principles. So, have they acknowledged your work? Do you reach out to them saying, I mean, this is possible, let us go ahead and do this? Do you Do they roadblock your suggestions? What do you have to say about this?
Well, when Mr. Jairam Ramesh was minister, he tried to set up and kind of get these methods infused into the actual monitoring protocols, and they went up on the website, stayed there for 2 weeks. They were never implemented, and they were discarded. The system, it's not just me, the system is now resistant to independent science. And I see there is a serious conflict of interest because the Indian forest bureaucracy manages the park, it handles the budget, it's accountable for the results. And its own people or people under its controls are also the auditors. This is like a company without independent audits. It's all being run by the same system. And unless we have a strong political leader who can break this system and say the auditing of ecological success or failure should be independent, science based, and distinct from the management, which has its own law enforcement role. Managers have a legitimate role dealing with the local people, dealing with the issues of conflict, dealing with the issue of protection. Law enforcement, nobody can do. You can't privatize it. But in every other advanced country, the science is done independently. Not just the US Fish and Wildlife Service does not have a monopoly on all wildlife research in USA. Nowhere do we have the system of a bureaucracy having monopoly over science. Trotting out some tame scientist who would cook up some number for you, but not really critical independent science. That is system is resisting. But I was also talking about the resistance from people now to protected areas. Everybody pretends to love wildlife, but not in my neighborhood. We don't want wildlife in my neighborhood. People far away may say we need tiger, we need elephant, but if people around those animals are now become so resistant to the idea of any law enforcement, they want a free run, or in some cases they have suffered so much damage, whatever the reason, there is resistance to the idea of national park. There was a when the Kudrimukh mine was running, we were fighting a court case in the Supreme Court, a network of people who, some of us, not just me alone, the major pro people groups were demanding the removal of the mine as well as denotification of the national park. So we have to think more rationally about this. This emotion charged, animal loving, uh, you know, people's rights, animal rights, everything can be in one basket and just show a beautiful movie and the problem is solved is not going to solve problems on the ground.
What about translocation as a solution?
Translocation is one more manipulation, which, in my opinion, is very rarely needed. Most places it's not needed. It is needed where I'm talking about tigers. There's a situation where it's for different species. If there is a extensive, reasonably extensive habitat where the prey base is intact or the prey has come back due to something, then if you introduce, and naturally the tigers cannot come to that place for whatever reason, if you can bring in tigers which have already learned hunting on wild prey and are not cued in on people or cattle from a population somewhere else and put them, it works. But very few such examples there. One example is Panna, where by 2000, after a successful tiger recovery and prey recovery, the park went to dogs. The management went to dogs. Just change of personnel. All the tigers were poached. So there was this tremendous natural prey base, and they brought some tigers from Kana, which already knew how to hunt wild prey, put them back there, and that population came back at a reasonable cost in a reasonable way and came back. But those are rare circumstances. For the most part, if you are moving a tiger from somewhere else, if you are moving it,
As like in the case of Bandipur and Nagarhole, Hills has been suggested as a alternative site.
Hills is a 1 day march for a tiger from Bandipur. So these 99% of these relocations have either led to more problems and man-eating or the death of tigers. But let us say that you are translocating a tiger from one place. you look at a place where there are no tigers, enough prey, then it's an idea that might work with great, you have to collar, you have to track it. But if you are dumping a tiger, which is a territorial species, to another place where there are also tigers, the first thing that happens is one of the tiger gets eliminated, either the introduced animal or the released animal. We tried an experiment again when Mr. Jairam Ramesh was minister. Vadra had recovered the prey base fully, fairly well. This was, I guess, 2012, something like that, 2008 or 9. After 14 years of relocation, protection, the habitat had come back and the prey density had come back. I have numbers. I am talking not uh, shooting breeze here. Actual transit data showed prey numbers were, but the tiger numbers always are slow to catch up because the response time is not, it's like the next, there's a lag. There was some room for tigers there. And we had a tiger that migrated, dispersed from Bandipur, from Gundre to Shikaripur, near Shikaripur. And it got into a problem there. It went over a year and a half time. It reached the place. It got into a conflict, a mauled demand to death. Then it was caught, and I was asked, which I said, here's one chance of possibly doing a successful relocation. And that type, because it was a sub-adult tiger which knew hunting, which had grown up in Bandipur, and here was a place where there possibly was a room for a dispersing animal to come in naturally. Although there were tigers with territories, let's put this tiger back in. We put that tiger back in, and it survived for about 3 or 4 months, but then the big territorial match killed it. The reverse example of this backfiring, there was a tigress on the fringes of Badra. She had raised her cub to dispersal age. But they still had not learned hunting, and and one of the tigers killed a woman, ate her part of her body. So clearly, he was stalking vehicles. He was on the way to a man-eater. He should have been either shot or put in a zoo. He could have still adapted to a zoo because he was a young animal. Instead, they took him, put him into Bhimgad, which had no prey, very little prey, lot of houses. That in 2 weeks, that animal killed 14 livestock and a pregnant woman. Then they had to put a bounty on it, and a local hunter killed it. This is the reality. We have to face it.
Thank you, Dr. Karanth. When I came here, when I started this interview, I thought it will be fairly straightforward, that you'll have some very pointed, prescriptive ideas of how to mitigate this conflict. But in this conversation, you've just revealed how dense and how complex the issue is. And you've established that very well. I think the most important point that you made was the resistance or the lack of a scientific perspective,
Openness.
an openness by the forest department, by the bureaucracy to handle this issue. And perhaps if it is mishandled as it is being done now, another point that you made is that it will impede the notification of tiger reserves in the future, which in the long run is a setback for conservation. So
Yeah, because we have 3% of India's land under 4% under protected areas. Effectively protected is 1%, and we have at least 10% up to which we have government land on which wildlife has to come back. My aim is in India with the 10%, that 10% under protected areas, and we are not going to get to that aim with these kind of approaches.
thank you, Dr. Karanth. Hopefully, we will get to that point, if not in the next few years, in the future at some point at least. Thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to Frontline. My pleasure. Thanks.